Hello, folks. Welcome back for another telling of one of the stories of Appalachia. I'm Steve Gilley, along with Rod Mullins, and today we're delving into a captivating tale from the heart of Appalachia, a story of mystery, injustice, and a chilling prophecy. So buckle up as we capture the life and controversial execution of James Calvin Logston, the last man to be legally hanged in Fentress County, Tennessee.
I've always found the name Fentress very interesting, Steve. When I've been traveling through Tennessee and I see the tags on the Tennessee license plate, it says Fentress County. I've always wondered what a unique name altogether. But this story that we're getting ready to talk about, why is it that it seems that when some of these people are being hanged, they prophesize about things? And that's kind of a hint, but, you know, there's one that we talked about before, and that's, of course, Doc Taylor and the hanging of Red Fox at the Wise County Courthouse. But this one is a little bit more intriguing, isn't it?
Well, it is indeed, and it's a story that's told around Fentress County. Now, we'll get into some more stuff about that as we get into the podcast, but it is a very interesting story, and he did make supposedly 3 separate predictions, and according to the folks up there, they all came true. And on that note, let's dive into the gripping tale of James Calvin Logston, better known as Cal. Born on June 17th, 1849 in Kentucky, Cal Logston's life was tragically cut short at the tender age of 22. He was said to have been a stranger to Fentress County, which sits northwest of Knoxville near the border with Kentucky. But he wasn't to be a stranger for long, for soon he would be accused of committing the brutal axe murder of a family, a crime that shook the community to its core.
Indeed it did, Steve. On November 19th, 1868, tragedy struck at a place known as the Three Forks of Wolf. An elderly widow, Lucinda Galloway, and her daughter, Catherine, and Catherine's young child, William, were killed. The motive seemed to be for money, a sum of $300 that Lucinda had received for her husband's service in the Civil War just a day prior. Well, amid all the chaos, a survivor emerged, a young boy wounded in the attack who ended up pointing a finger at Logston, saying that Cal was the one responsible for the heinous crime. This accusation triggered a chain of events that would lead Cal to an arrest and then ultimately his conviction. At first, it was assumed that a group of local outlaws had been behind the brutal killings. This band of desperados was known as the Wolf River Gang. They were a ruthless group that had struck fear into the hearts of the region for 3 years. Now, despite all of this, Cal Logston, a stranger to the area, he was singled out and brought to trial. It's worth noting that his trial went through 3 rounds, each ending in a conviction upheld by the Tennessee Supreme Court.
Now, Cal's own aunts, his mother's sisters, testified against him, although doubts loomed over his guilt. Cal vehemently protested his innocence until his final breath. And that, folks, brings us to the chilling details of his execution on April 5th, 1872 in Jamestown, Tennessee. Now, the execution was no swift affair. It took 3 attempts to finally do the deed. Cal's journey to the gallows in a horse-drawn wagon, accompanied by the Reverend A.B. Wright, is a somber image that speaks to the gravity of the situation. Reverend Wright was a Methodist minister in Fentress County with ties to both Cal Logston and the Galloways, and he'd been picked by Logston to speak at his execution. As the clock struck 1:30, a crowd gathered under the sunny sky. Men and women dressed in their Sunday best bore witness to the heart-wrenching event that was about to unfold. Cal, despite his dire circumstances, found the strength to greet his family and friends, shaking hands one last time. Standing on the gallows, he asked to make a final statement, a plea of innocence that would echo through the years.
I'm innocent, and to prove this, I will be hung 3 times, as the rope will break twice.
Well, that rope tightened around his neck. The trapdoor released, and then the rope snapped, just as Cal predicted. He fell to the ground.
You know something? The number 3 has popped up here twice in this podcast.
Yes, it has. Maybe it'll pop up a 3rd time. You never know.
I know, but I'm starting to get a little bit of the willies right now thinking about this. Well, imagine the hushed silence that must have fallen over the crowd. A second rope was secured, and this time it held for a brief 30 seconds before breaking again. Ha! There's the mention of the 3 again, but this time with 30 seconds. A third attempt was made, and a weakened Cal took his place on the platform. In his final act of defiance, he raised his hand to silence the crowd once more. Cal's voice quivered as he warned the gathering that his death would bring forth undeniable signs of his innocence. If he were hanged again, he prophesied that 3 days and 3 nights, there we go again, of unprecedented rain would descend upon the county, alongside a monumental flood in the Obey River. Furthermore, a century later, venomous snakes would emerge at his burial site should he be proven guilty. And so, for the third time, Cal was hanged. This time, he hung suspended for a gut-wrenching 27 minutes before his life finally ebbed away.
I guess they wanted to make sure he was gone, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, the eerie climax of this story is as uncanny as it is unsettling. As soon as Cal drew his last breath, rain began to fall from the previously clear sky. Panic spread among the crowd, and folks fled to their horse-drawn wagons and buggies, seeking shelter from the sudden storm.
Well, for 3 days and 3 nights, rain poured down relentlessly, and I better correct myself on this, the OB River, not the Obey, but the OB River, swelled to unprecedented levels. The prophecy seemed to be fulfilled in the most astonishing manner.
And let's not forget the chilling aftermath that awaited a century later. In 1972, exactly 100 years after Cal's burial, venomous snakes emerged in multitudes near his grave, as he had foretold. University of Tennessee professionals were summoned to deal with this eerie manifestation. Now, Cal's story lives on in the simple sandstone marker that stands as a testament to his life and his enigmatic end, a marker that reads, Cal Logston, hanged 1872. Now, Rod, this is a great story, but you have to understand this is also a story.
Right.
If you go back and look at newspaper reports back in that particular time, they do not mention a prophecy.
Okay.
Although they do tell the other details. He was hanged, and 3 times it broke, and 3 times he was hanged. The local history of Fentress County doesn't mention a prophecy. And the Reverend Wright wrote his autobiography, which I managed to get a copy of online, and nowhere does he write anything about Cal Logston saying anything at all when he was hanged. But there apparently was a 3-day flood, because there is a name for that. It was called the Logston Tide, after Mr. Logston.
Wow. And this is just one of those things that, like you said, though, I think it's been embellished. It's the whole thing about storytelling, and that is you start out with this idea or the beginnings of a story, and then as it's kind of told later on, somebody kind of throws in there, yeah, and he stood up there on those gallows and he said 3 days and 3 nights and things like that, and then it starts settling in a little bit more as legend when it's been embellished clearly as you can say it. But it's kind of weird, though. The same thing about the snakes. This whole thing about the snakes coming forth, there at the grave, and then this being known as the Logston Tide. Wow. It's sad, too. He met his demise being hanged 27 minutes at the age of 22 years old. It's sad, but do we have a full story behind it? I mean, did he really do this? He said he was innocent, but has anything ever pointed to his innocence?
Not that I can tell. Now, there have been some books written about this, but they mainly dwell on these predictions that he supposedly made of being hanged 3 times and then the snakes and the flood and all that, but not so much about whether he was innocent or guilty. It could very well be that he actually was guilty. It was a very brutal crime, but my understanding is that this aunt that turned on him may have been involved in this too, and she sort of, as they say now, threw him under the bus.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking too with that. So,
well, there you have it, folks. The story of James Calvin Logston, a name etched in the annals of Appalachian history. Another one of the stories of Appalachia. Now, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the Stories Podcast. You'll find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Audible, or on your favorite podcast app. We're also on TikTok at Stories of Appalachia and on Instagram at Story Appalachia with short video stories about this place we call home. Thanks for listening. Till next time, y'all take care. So long, everybody.